Good evening, children. Let us begin with the new chapter, that is chapter number 8, Reproduction. So today we will look into only introduction part to this chapter. I want everyone to recall the basic concepts like nucleus, chromosomes, DNA, which you have already studied in your 9th standard, isn't it? And also a life process chapter that we covered a few months back, isn't it? So, reproduction is one of the characteristics of living organisms, isn't it? So, I want everyone to recall all these basic things to look into the depth knowledge for this chapter. Clear, children? So, let us begin. Coming to the definition for reproduction. So, I want you people to split this word reproduction into two, that is re and production. Re means again, production means to produce. So the process of giving birth to young ones is said to be reproduction in general. Okay. So coming to biological definition, reproduction is a process by which a living organism produces more living organism of its own kind. Just notice the last line, of its own kind, isn't it? You can see in a picture, a family picture, where a grandfather is there, grandmother is there, father, mother and children. And in second picture you can notice a dog gave birth to puppies. Can you imagine a dog giving birth to kittens? No way, right? And do you think a man can give birth to puppies? No, isn't it? That definition shows, and it is very clear, reproduction is a process by which a living organism, isn't it? Here no living organism can reproduce, isn't it? Reproduction is one of the characteristics of living organisms. So only living organism can reproduce the young ones, and that too of its own kind. So this is about the definition for reproduction. Coming to life process characters. Okay, so characteristics of life process that you have already studied in life process chapter, isn't it? So let's recall that. So what are the life process characters, living organisms characters? That is nutrition, transportation, respiration, excretion, reproduction and metabolism. Okay, so all these are very necessary to all living organism to survive, to sustain the life, isn't it? And also reproduction being a major thing in the living organisms. Okay, and why reproduction is so important? So to continue life on earth, isn't it? We usually study that many organisms, many life get extinct on the earth. For example, dinosaurs. We just see dinosaurs in the photos today, right? We see pictures of dinosaurs, but we haven't seen it directly, isn't it? So that might be a reason, this might be one of the reason that maybe dinosaurs reproduction rate was low, so that is the reason it might be extinct, or it wouldn't have found a mate, isn't it, to reproduce to their young ones. So that might be also one of the reason for the extinction of dinosaurs. And we also hearing to the news, current news, that tigers are getting decreased. Tiger rate is being getting decreased, right? The number of tigers population is getting decreased, isn't it? So this might be also one of the reason, isn't it? So reproduction is so important to continue a life on earth. So reproduction is nothing but giving birth to young ones, right? And the progeny keeps on multiplying. So particular species population keeps on increasing on the earth. And that is the reason reproduction is so important. And also for the survival of a particular organism. Imagine tiger's population is more because the reproduction rate in case of tiger is more. So we can see more number of tigers. So that is one of the example I can relate. Okay, so survival of particular organisms will be more. and a large amount of energy is consumed in reproduction. So amount of energy consumed is more in case of reproduction process. So reproduction saves a species from extinction. As I said in the beginning, reproduction saves the species. So many plants also got extinct, right? So we all see those animals or birds in a picture or in a web, isn't it? We don't notice that organisms now because of the extinction, and this could be one of the reason, isn't it, children? And we all know that life began more than 3 billion years ago, and 8.7 million species have been created. Okay, so reproduction plays an important role in case of living organism. And also we see the variations. So before going to variation, so let's have a brief thing about DNA. Okay, so in class ninth you have learned about nucleus, and inside the nucleus you have also noticed nucleolus. So we'll just ignore this nucleolus, we'll catch up only the chromatin network. So how this chromatin network is placed in the nucleus, children? It is like tangled thread, right? It looks like a tangled thread. And once this enters the stage of cell division, what happens to this chromatin network is it breaks down into fragments, and you can see there is a chromosomes formed, right? So thick chromosome is formed, rigid one. And this chromosome, if you take a tiny focus on this chromosome, you can notice a DNA. Okay, this all can be observed only through electron microscope or like that. Okay, and this chromosomes have a genetic material, okay, that is said to be DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, and this genetic material, what is the function of this genetic material, that is DNA, which carries inheritance from a parent, isn't it? And it is source of a protein, right? It consists of source of protein, and these different proteins will eventually lead to altered body designs. And we often say that yes, you resemble like your mother, yes, you resemble like your father. So how we are able to make out? Because we are inherited the characters from our ancestor or our from our parents, that is through genes, isn't it? That is genetic material. And coming to this importance of variation, so variation, I'll give one example. So we have one water sample where we see a lot of bacteria or microorganism within that water. We can't see, but I'm generally telling you, we can guess there is a microorganisms in water. Okay, so if you take a pond water or any sort of water, we see a lot of microorganisms, especially protozoans. Okay, and these protozoans will survive very happily in that water. What if I increase the temperature of that water? Many organisms which can't sustain that temperature will die, isn't it? So there is no microorganism in that water if I keep on eating that. So I want to just make this bacteria or microorganisms very resistant to this temperature. Okay, so how is it possible? Even if I heat that water at some extent, if I increase the temperature, there are few bacteria will resist that heat. That means there is a variation compared to other bacteria, isn't it? That means it is very resistant to tolerate that heat. So that is the importance of variation. So variation makes some individual better fitted in the struggle for existence. So these bacteria are struggling to survive in the presence of so much of temperature. So if there is a variation in bacteria to sustain this temperature, they can sustain that heat, isn't it? That is the importance of variation. They help the individual to adapt themselves according to the changing environment. If the temperature keeps on changing, they have that ability to sustain that temperature. That is the importance of variation. And discontinuous variation produce new traits in the organism. If there is a discontinuous variation, it is produced in progeny. So it can be seen in the next progeny as well. Okay, so variation allow breeders to improve race of useful plants and animals for increased resistance, better yield, quicker growth, and lesser input. We see that many plants get very resistant towards pest. That means the progeny of the plants is so good, and that is an improvised breed that they use, and they constitute the raw material for evolution. Variation gives each organism a distinct individuality. Because of variation, species do not remain static. Instead, they are slowly getting modified, forming new species with time. Pre-adaptation caused by the presence of neutral variations are extremely useful for the survival against sudden changes in the environment. Example, resistance against new pesticides or antibiotic. This is the importance of variation. I hope everyone had followed the basic concepts of reproduction, why reproduction is important, and also importance of variations, and about definition for reproduction. Okay, so I hope everyone had followed today's concept. Worksheet will be sent along with this video. Do solve it. See you all, children. Have a good day.